Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, AdTech Privacy and How to Continue to Measure Success in a Cookieless World. I am super excited about today, but right before we get into it, a few little housekeeping tips. This is being recorded, so you will be receiving a copy of that recording in your email. We'll also be sending you our AdTech privacy guides, so you will be getting those. And the last thing is that the Q&A will be at the end, but you can send questions to me or to everyone using the chat or the questions tab in GoToWebinar. And I think that's about it. If you have any problems, please feel free to reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. I'm going to now introduce Jim Cain, who is the CEO and founder of Napkyn. After starting Napkyn in 2009 based on a moment of inspiration, and I will let you guys all know that yes, it was written on the back of a napkin. Jim has bootstrapped a multi-million-dollar firm and recognized brand in the digital analytics consulting space. A recognized thought leader on digital analytics and e-commerce, Jim has spent the last decade consulting with some of the largest brands in North America through successful digital transformation initiatives. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Tara. You made me sound way cooler than I actually am. But to do my introduction for someone who is legitimately cool, I'm very excited to have my friend Sharon join us from Google today. Again, we feel privileged. This is very cool. Let me tell you a little bit about Sharon. Sharen Philips is the head of U.S. channel sales partners inside Google's Platform Partners Group. And for over 20 years, Sharon has been a media and technology trailblazer. She works with some of the world's leading brands, media companies, technology providers, and she helps them transform their businesses while driving more in-depth engagement with their customers. Sharon started in sales, just like me, and has had various roles in new business and partnership development with firms like Prodigy Internet, Time Inc., Cox Media. And she's an advocate of diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging initiatives, focusing on greater gender and racial equity through her involvement with various DEI councils at Google and also industry initiatives. She's always at the forefront of transformational change, and she develops strategies that drive an organization's bottom line. And again, real privilege, Sharon, to have you here with us on the Good Ship Napkyn.
Thank you for a wonderful introduction. I'm overwhelmed by it. Thank you.
So this is, I think, one of the few webinars where, again, we kind of had the privilege to be sitting and sharing information with one of our friends from Google. So it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of talk about some of the different perspectives and things today. Just for those of you who have again, been kind enough to join us to listen to us talk in today, I'm just going to frame out a little bit on how today's agenda is going to run. So Sharon and I are going to do a bit of a fireside chat. There's a lot of interesting things going on in the world right now in AdTech and MarTech. Sharon's got some really wonderful perspective to share with us. So we're going to do a bit of a fireside chat. After we do that, Joy, who's a member of our delivery organization at Napkyn, who also has somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 years experience, is going to share some content with us from an AdTech and privacy guide that you're welcome to download that she spearheaded the creation of. And then at the end, we're going to open it up to some more questions. We've actually already gotten some really amazing questions from some of our customers, some of our partners, some of the people on the team. Sharon and I will go through some of those questions. And then hopefully, as you're listening, you'll be sharing some questions of your own in the chat. And at the end, Tara will bring all of those up. So really, again, the emphasis today is on Q&A and trying to demystify some of the, not chaos, but we're in a period of extreme change in digital. Obviously, Google is at the forefront of responding to some of the change and also leading the charge on some of the change that's taking shape. And, Sharon, I think that might be a good place to start with our fireside chat. Again, browsers are different, continuing to change. Legislation is evolving in the United States and Canada and Europe and starting to roll out globally. The way that marketers do their jobs is fundamentally changing right now. And I'd love to hear, I don't know if it's a big open question, but I'd love to hear a little bit of your thoughts on what Google's perspective is on some of this change and what's going on.
Sure. I think that when we think about change, we also think about how does that impact you as an individual? And so let's talk about the landscape. So the landscape is definitely shifting, as you shared, largely driven by consumer changes. There's a declining user trust. There's increasing regulations, and also all the platforms and technologies are moving around in terms of cross-site and app tracking. We know today from a Pew Research Center study that 72% of Americans feel that almost all of what they're doing online is being tracked by advertisers, technology firms, or other companies. And 81% say that's particularly risk the face of data collection outweighs the benefit. So tracking me is not benefiting me as a whole. So because of that, it has become clear that ad-supported web needs to evolve to be better supported for privacy and to restore trust. We need to rethink the type of tools we have relied on to fund the open web, like third-party cookies. And given that the growing user concerns about privacy has set in motion a series of change that will reshape the digital advertising industry for years to come. The exciting part of that is that we're at the forefront together with partners like yourself.
Well, thank you very much. That makes a lot of sense. And, you know, it's just, especially when I talk to people in the world about what I do and, you know, lay people who don't have a lot of experience with marketing or analytics, that whole, if I talk in front of my Google Home, am I going to get a weird ad? Like, it's definitely a thing, right? And I like the approach that everyone's taking to be a little bit more user-focused in terms of privacy and ethics. And Google has done a tremendous number of things, obviously being one of the largest platforms that people use to interact on the internet. Could you go a little bit further into what Google's thinking about? Like, what is their approach for all of these changes? What is their vision for a cookieless world, a privacy world?
Sure.
What's next?
Absolutely. Our goal is to raise the bar for user privacy by developing better and more privacy-focused experiences for users while addressing the requirements for publishers and advertisers. It is a balance. We want to ensure that all people around the world can continue to access ad-supported content across the web and app in a very secure and private-centric world. We believe privacy and performance are not at odds with each other and can coexist. The ecosystem changes are an opportunity to actually build a sustainable and up-level the entire ecosystem for everyone. So how we've been really focusing on that is really around the user-first approach. Sustaining user trust is core to an open ad-supported web. We want to meet and then exceed the standards of our users have for data privacy and their standard for all experiences online. We believe successful ecosystem has trust as the core of it. We believe that happens in a couple different ways: providing protection for users with advanced security and privacy, ensuring users have choice about the use of their data, which is respected, and ensure users have the control over their privacy. It means investing in what we call privacy-preserving technologies that will establish a foundation for long-term sustainability of an ad-supported ecosystem. We are investing on our side a lot in first-party data, automation, and machine learning. We're leaning into more about aggregation and anonymization, on-device processing to really think about what privacy looks like. We are also leaning into more advanced solutions like the privacy sandbox will help us protect our user identity and information. It's also important to recognize that standard and solutions need to work for everyone. We're partnering with the industry to ensure that, so we can't do this work alone. Fundamentally, users' experience and trust in digital wouldn't change if ad-supported ecosystem was only sometimes protecting users. In order to preserve the ecosystem, we need to be in front of that change so it's always protecting users. In order to make those solutions for everyone, we work very closely with industry bodies such as the IAB, as well as the W3C. We get there, but we need to do it together. And I know for Jim, your company is looking at this at the forefront. So how are you thinking about empowering your clients from this privacy first perspective?
So it's kind of neat because, you know, again, in 13 years of Napkyn, the value and the importance of digital analytics has kind of gone from sitting beside tech support to sitting in the C-suite, which is good for us. We get to do a lot more big and interesting things than we were doing 13 years ago. our approach hasn't really had to change. We have a strong emphasis on what I would just call doing things properly. So thinking about data that doesn't break, infrastructures that take ethics into account, having a Google Analytics that allows the business to evolve properly, think about privacy. So we haven't had to change too much in the last little while, really at all, in terms of the work that we do and the approach that we take. But our ability to have conversations that lead to, yes, that's a good idea, as opposed to, that's interesting, but I don't think we need to, has just been huge. And as an example of one of the things that we've tried to do to help our clients, think more about privacy, think more about infrastructure, because solid foundations equal better governance, equals more compliance, equals knowing that you're being kind of privacy first. We've developed products that support governance for our clients. They do things like automatically look for personally identifiable information, or PII, inside tools where they shouldn't be. And 3 years ago, things like that would be interesting but not valuable. And the ownership and kind of custody and caring about data has become a real first-class item, which is just really great for us and definitely really great for our shared customers, I think.
That's awesome.
And to kind of take that further forward, and by the way, this is so helpful, Sharon, because there's just so many blog posts and articles and tweets and pundits that I've never heard of in some cases, sharing their opinions on what they think Google's done and what they think Google's going to do. That this is like, I'm learning a lot today, and I really appreciate it. And I think one of the things that we have heard a lot of confusion about, especially from a lot of our big shared clients, are some of the new technologies coming out of Google. I know you know where I'm going to go with this. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you on Flock and on Fledge, where they fit, where you think they're going.
I love that, Jim. And I love how you shared that, you were always in the forefront of change, right? And what you were doing is just kind of like, before advanced, it's now become table stakes when we think about privacy preserving solutions, right? You want to remove that PII and things of that nature. So when it comes to Flock and Fledge, let me give you a little bit of background in terms of that. So the Privacy Sandbox was launched by Chrome in August 2019. And just to give the audience a perspective, it's really a collaboration with the web community to develop an open standard that fundamentally enhances privacy on the web. So it's a group of proposals about rebuilding advertising without third-party cookies. So the Google's ad team is using these principles outlined in the Privacy Sandbox to build, test solutions for both remarketing, interest-based advertising, and measurement, and use cases are really developing. And so you've mentioned two. So Flock stands for Federated Learning of Cohorts and supports interest-based advertising. It's used as an advanced machine learning technology known as federated learning to allow advertisers to reach new audiences. With Flock, web browsers like Chrome and Firefox talk to each other, and based on the user's browsing habits, finds other similar users and groups like them to put them in a cohort. By creating this simulation based on the principles defined by Flock, our ad teams are able to test this privacy-first alternative to third-party cookies. Results indicate that when it comes to generating interest-based audiences using Flock, it's actually very effective as a replacement for third-party cookies. To pivot to Fledge, which actually stands for First Locally Executed Decision Over Groups Experiment. That's a lot. But what that really means in the simplest form is remarketing. Without the need to collect a particular user's browsing history, it enables a form of like on-device auction during a publisher ad rendering to choose the most relevant ad. Data is stored locally by the browser, not by a third party. Here's the thing to take away from the Privacy Sandbox. It's far from done. It's now entering the testing and experimentation phase, and many elements are actually not focusing on ads. But we are confident the ones that are coming out are really developed as part of this Privacy Sandbox will set the best path forward for the industry to improve user privacy and sustain a healthy and ad-supported ecosystem. It represents the future of how ads and measurement will work, and so we ask the industry to come with us to basically continue to test and experiment in the sandbox. No pun intended. Come hang out with us in the sand.
That's helpful. And again, just kind of thinking about, the ghost of data past and the ghost of data future. Years ago, Napkyn was a company that did data for the purpose of reporting. We would certainly not be having a conversation with you today about media, right? And the ghost of data present is that kind of same data store that's being used to tell those, stories and insights to the business about their performance, that same data store is being used to go out and tell their stories to their stakeholders out on the commercial web. It's helped us learn a lot and change a lot of the ways that we do things, especially how we engage with marketers. And this approach, people like people as opposed to that person in terms of targeting, I think is both respectful but also really valuable, and also ties very closely into how analysis is done in a tool like Google Analytics, right? Like, we've never been asked to do a report for a stakeholder on Jim Cain from Ottawa who likes cycling, right? Like, we're looking at people who perform a certain way at a certain time. We're looking for statistical significance. So, like, there's a lot more even alignment now between, how media is moving forward and how data is being used by the analysts. And that carries us kind of nicely into something that's obviously extremely near and dear to my heart, which is, Google Analytics 4 or GA4. It's a very different product in a number of exciting ways. I'm sure it represents 100 million person hours of development by Google. I mean, it's a new product. Wow. And it really represents the future of this product, right? I'd love to hear, some of your thoughts, and anything that you can share about, why did we come up with a brand new Google Analytics? If it wasn't broke, why fix it? Where do we see this in the future of our clients and our stakeholders?
It's a good question. I think where Google has always been is at the forefront of consumer change, right? So we know millions of businesses, both large and small, rely on Google Analytics to understand their customer preferences and create better experiences for them. With more commerce moving online, we just went through the pandemic and everything was done online. Businesses have increased pressure to really make every marketing dollar count. And so insights from digital analytics tools are really critical. But with major change in consumer behavior, as well as privacy-driven changes, we need to really rethink how we look at analytics. In a survey from Forrester, marketers said that improving the use of analytics is actually a top priority. And existing solutions make it difficult, even while long-standing like Google or traditional Google Analytics property, to actually see a complete view of the customer and to derive their insights that you want. So a little bit of history. So Google Analytics has changed significantly over the years, we're looking to build more features and functionality. So a few years ago, we released new analytics, a new analytic structure, I should say, for our app clients, which was Google Analytics in Firebase. We're now working to simplify our analytics offering and providing a new and best-in-class analytic capabilities in analytics, Google Analytics 4. So to help keep a better ROI for our marketers in the long term, we're creating a new intelligent analytics platform that basically has foundations for app plus web properties. The goal here is that the future of analytics is really built to be privacy forward, that it's a durable measurement, so looking at tagging, it has features about consent, first-party data imports. It's privacy-centric in terms of activations through BigQuery, lots of machine learning so we can understand behavior, conversion modeling. So many of these new features will only be available in Google Analytics 4. It's a privacy-centric by design. So we rely on analytics even as the industry changes. It's something you can depend on as a durable solution to move into the years to come. So the new analytics is really exciting. Part of our DNA as well as your DNA. And so we look forward to hearing more about what customers are saying. How have initial conversations gone since you started talking about it early last year when it was in beta and we move out into actually launching the product?
It's exciting, but it's bittersweet, right? When people ask me why GA4, my response is always Google ran out of runway on exciting new features that will use a back-end data store that was designed 10 years ago, right? Like, the move away from session to hit has completely unlocked a whole new set of capabilities for data scientists, for users of GA, and it required a brand new tool. It's just, you can't click a button to upgrade for something this significant. That's why I say bittersweet, right? Like, so a lot of our customers are initially like, oh, hey, consultant, you want us to go out and redeploy a brand new version of a tool that we got you to deploy 3 years or 4 years ago, right? But when they understand that new deployment and how significant the changes are, unlock, that flexible data store and allows for completely custom front-end reporting. Like, there's no more end of the line when you're doing analysis in GA. Once they realize those use cases, they get extremely excited, because the kinds of things that you can do with the data in GA4, whether you're using the free or the premium version, allow businesses to do things they just literally couldn't do before. So the uptake for our client base, for firms that are actually doing what we're calling a dual deploy, so bringing in GA4 now while it's still in beta, to really kind of set themselves up to transition smoothly and accurately, the uptake's extremely high. And the benefits are already happening, especially, again, with companies that are increasingly becoming more reliant on mobile or app experiences, for sure. So that was a lot of stuff. I wonder how many notes people listening in have taken right now. And I'm learning a ton too. This is really great. I'd like to actually pass it over to my good friend Joy, who's going to give us some slides on AdTech and privacy, and also set the stage for this amazing ebook that she's helped author. So Joy, over to you.
Oh, just while we're waiting for Joy, I'm going to push out a poll. So if you can let me know where you are on this question.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
Excellent. All right.
Can I do it? I have.
No, we can't, Jim. Yes.
Joy, you just let me know.
I look good here.
Joy, let me know when you're ready, and I'll close the poll.
Okay, so I'm ready whenever. So just let me know when you can see my screen.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, great. So we're all good. You can hear me and you can see the screen?
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right, so I'm just going to take a couple minutes, because like Jim said, all this information is available in an ebook. So we'll talk about things at a pretty high level, and I'll probably talk fast. So all of this stuff is written down, and you guys will have, Tara will send it to you after this call. So just wanted to kind of hit on three things. So, like, what are we really talking about? That's always good to know, I guess. And how are you being affected by it, and how will you be affected by it, and what can you do about it? So we'll jump right in. So what are we really talking about? So we hear the word cookieless and cookie apocalypse, or however you say it, all the time, but like, fundamentally, when I talk to people, a lot of people don't really even know what a cookie is. So I won't go into the boring technical detail of it, but I will kind of explain to you what this all means. So basically, the way the world works now is, if you go to a website and you look at something, or you click on a product, chances are a couple days later you're going to see that product following you around the internet. And that's because of what happens with cookies. So cookies are just these small text files that a browser sets on behalf of a website that you're on. So basically, if you're looking at if you're on napkyn.com, napkyn.com can set a cookie that will just be like what's called like a text identifier. So it's a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so then that's on your computer. So when you come back to Napkyn will look to see if there's an identifier, and it'll say, oh yes, I see Joy's been here before. So that's just kind of basically how cookies started. But then websites realized that if you filled out a form, or if you put something in your cart, they could actually remember that too. So as time went on, cookies got smarter. Then another thing that happened was that websites that you aren't on could set a cookie while you're on that site. So for things like advertising with double click and floodlights and all that, that site could actually set a cookie. So if you think about it, a first party cookie is like your kid. So you expect to see your kid at the dinner table, and you recognize him and you know him. But then you can think of third-party cookies as like your neighbor's kids. So things that you're familiar with and you might recognize, but they're not your kids. So that's why kind of the first party cookie is things that you know, things that you trust, and the third party cookie, the neighbor's kids, are things that you might be a little more leery of. And as this prevalence of these third party cookies, so as more and more of the neighbor's kids came to your dinner table, and some of them you recognized and some of you didn't, and then they started following you around the internet, showing you things that might be super relevant or might be kind of casually relevant, people started to get annoyed and scared and worried. So the the organization stepped in and the browser stepped in and said, this has kind of gotten out of control. We need to dial back the reins on what's possible with these third-party cookies. And so that's why all of these changes are happening. So this is kind of like why we are heading towards the cookieless world. So this is not anything new. This has been conversations and articles and things like that for years now. And, it's been, actively being dealt with since 2019. So we knew that this cookieless world was coming. It's just here upon us all of a sudden. Things that started in 2019 are now like right in front of us, in the next coming months. And so yes, so that is kind of the history and how we've got to the fact that we're on the precipice of the cookieless world. So time for a change. So this is how we've been doing things for a very long time. It's very, we're very used to personalization and targeting and all the capabilities that we're used to experiencing that the cookie has brought us, but now that world is changing. So some of the people that we talk to are of the opinion, maybe wait, I'll just ignore it. These are going away. Things aren't going to change with measurement. Things aren't going to change with my advertising and my marketing, but kind of that's not true. Kind of the world, as we know, the world is changing. So then a lot of people take the approach, oh, this is just doom and gloom. There's nothing that I can do about it. And so the approach of anybody that is kind of in the analytics world is like, why is that even a question? If you have data, you can do an analysis and understand the impact that's already happening to your reporting and your marketing, and you can then understand where you are and actually set the stage for where things are going. So basically what you can do is you can use the tools that you have to understand the impact. So there are different browsers. So there's Chrome, Safari, Firefox, all the different browsers, and they're all handling the cookie deprecation different ways. So what you can do is actually understand, okay, what percentage of my traffic is coming to my site from Chrome and what's coming from Safari and what's coming from other browsers. So you can understand the impact on the, based on the different browsers. Then you can also look back in time. So 2019, before all of this started happening and before we started seeing cookies disappear, you could actually see things like new versus returning visitors, because one of the things that, not having a cookie is going to make a challenge is understanding a new visitor versus a returning visitor. So you can track over time the percentage of new visitors versus returning. So 2019, you'll probably see more returning visitors than you will in 2020 and 2021, and certainly in 2022 as these changes evolve. You can then also go back in time, before this was a concern, and you can kind of change history. So one of the cool things about Google Analytics is there's lots of different reporting for attribution, and what you can do is you can kind of change the way that Google Analytics gives credit to your different marketing programs. So by default, I think it sets to a 7-day window, but there's a section, and like I said, this is all written down in an ebook that we'll provide to you, kind of step-by-step instructions, but you can go back in time and look at how your marketing channels were performing based on the attribution when it was set to a 7-day window or a 30-day window, but you could then change it to maybe a 1-day window, or even just look at last click. So you then could see, okay, this is how the world looked when there was cookies aplenty, and this is how it would have looked, and then kind of compare that to how it looks in your current state. And then you can actually know what the future holds. So back in 2019, 100% of cookies were good and they were used for your reporting. Back in 2019, things started to change. Now, in current state, there's probably 20 to 30% of third-party cookies that are blocked. So this is what your analysis kind of looks like. And no, like your marketing and the performance of your marketing and advertising aren't going to change. The reports might just start to look different. So if you know kind of how things were before the cookies were a problem and how things are now, you can kind of predict what things will look like and set the stage and kind of just know, know how things will be. So what do? This was my key point. If you don't freak out, they won't freak out. I think the biggest concern with the clients that I talk to is that everybody's going to just start doubting the advertising and doubting the analytics because things will change. But if you have history and you have the current state and you can kind of let people know what the future will look like, then I think that really does just calm everybody down. So having the data and having the ability to show what things are and explain, okay, this is what's happening with the cookies, this is the cookie apocalypse, and these are why the numbers are going to change. As long as you're calm and confident in what's happening and why it's happening and what will happen, then I think everything will be fine. And additionally, this gives you an opportunity to kind of find new opportunities. So not only can you kind of rethink about your analytics and your tracking and how you measure performance, but there's also other kind of things that you could do. So maybe before these third-party cookies were so pervasive, people marketed a little bit differently. So I'd like to say I wasn't thinking about marketing in 1999, but I was, and I was doing it, but probably not doing it very well. But one of the things that's fundamentally different about back then is if we wanted information about somebody, we requested it, and we didn't just rely that it would be stored in a browser. We actually wrote it into a database. So basically we had all that information. It was information that we were given permission to have, and we stored it securely and safely in a database. But what that created was first party data. And now that's one of the greatest things that people are thinking about is actually integrating this first party data that they have with the analytics. So go back in time and, go old school and ask for permission. Again, this gives you the ability to fall in love with analytics again, because as things are changing, you want to start to think about how you measure things. And have to be fair to Mikey, my dog. So rather than just the dog and love cat, you can fall in love with analytics freely again, because now you not only have the opportunity to love your existing analytics, your Google Analytics or GA360, but also you have Google Analytics 4. And Sharon and Jim talked a bit about that, but there are two fundamentally different approaches to analytics, and they sit very well side by side, because GA360 can answer kind of the old school questions and the questions that you're used to asking and used to thinking about, and GA4 actually offers a whole new perspective with built-in machine learning and built-in artificial intelligence. My quote about GA4 is it answers the questions that you didn't even know that you wanted to ask. So using all the data plus the machine learning and AI really gives you kind of a new perspective on things. And data science. So now you have all this data. So basically now that data science is kind of mainstream and widely accepted, more so than it was in the past. It's something that we see a lot of our clients thinking about and wanting to get more information about. So I know the slide says, I told you it was fun and I didn't. So this is actually a slide from an older deck where I did actually tell a data science joke. So I guess I owe you a joke. So the joke is a SQL query walks into a bar and goes up to two tables and says, "Can I join you?" And so I wasn't going to tell you that joke, but I thought about that joke today when I was walking Mikey, and I actually thought that it's a really funny joke. And I know that Jim likes data science jokes too, so I wanted to share that with him too. And so yeah, so basically, you know what's going on, you know why it's going on. If you have the data, you can actually understand and chart what's going to happen. And if you don't freak out, they won't freak out. So you got this. And back to you, Tara.
That was awesome, Joy. Thank you very much. I think the biggest theme that, I don't use enough when I'm talking to people about some of these changes is just, this isn't apocalypse. This is a evolution, and it's always going to be evolving, right? I remember, and again, I've been doing this for almost 20 years too. And I remember when I started my career, being able to look at web traffic by geo was impossible. And the reason was because the vast majority of Americans used AOL to access the internet, and all of AOL's servers were in Norfolk, Virginia. So it would look like 90% of an e-commerce site's traffic came out of one city in Virginia. It was unusable data. Eventually that evolved to become a really exciting and important piece of data that we use all the time. I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, COVID plays with my ability to think about time. But the SEO data, organic search data, that used to show up in Google Analytics changed. And the reason it changed is because Google was thinking about individual security. That data disappeared. We continued to evolve to think about different ways to look at SEO. So really, this is just another step in an evolution of empowering marketers and also respecting their stakeholders, which I think is great. And as that kind of brings us into some of the Q&A, where again we've gotten great questions from our team and our customers and our partners, and I've got Sharon all to myself, and I'm going to be throwing some of these questions at her. Sharon, thinking about that kind of concept of privacy and evolution and not apocalypse, you were the first person, and this is a true story, you were the first person that ever said cookieless world to me. And I remember because it was back when I was allowed to see you in person, which was wonderful.
Right.
And we were having a coffee in New York, and you said cookieless world as some of the things that you were planning on for your strategy. And I was just like, oh, that's a brilliant phrase. And clearly, you and the team at Google have been thinking about this not for the last 3 weeks. This is years of planning and effort to get us ready for this, right?
Yeah.
When we think about some of the advancements, the fact that Google's like a global platform provider for a lot of these things, what do you think some of the latest advancements and approaches with Google are as we move to this cookieless world?
You actually make me hungry with a cookieless world, but you're right. We've been thinking about it for a while, and the term I always want to focus on is this privacy preserving technologies that has the balance between our advertisers and measurement for the web and well as customers. So there are 3 areas that we are really leaned in on that you'll hear a lot of if you hear any Google article or Google speakers. One is about first-party data. We want to enable both marketers and publishers to drive greater user experience with their own customer information and so that powers digital marketing. We continue to support first-party data relationships in our products and deepen our support of solutions that build on these direct relationships with customers and brands. The second part to that is once you have your first-party data in place or understand your first-party data, is around automation and machine learning. So we're shifting from precision, we have a lot of information, to predictive, where automation and machine learning will be that bridge to really future-proof our investment to drive results. So from modeling conversions where they aren't directly observed to predicting the most relevant ads when user signals just aren't present. So a lot of really advanced technology. And then we talked about it earlier, Jim, the privacy sandbox is where we're looking at those principles to basically help us to build and test solutions that cover that 4 main areas. We're talking about ad targeting, we're talking about ad delivery, ad performance and reporting. And most importantly, all of that is wrapped around user privacy. So we're really confident that new technologies like the Privacy Sandbox will power web ads and measurement in the future. So that will help us go really far, really fast, and we just want to continue to test and experiment around those principles.
Yeah, we're actually, you would think like that concept of what are you going to do when a machine takes your job, you know what I mean? Would be terrifying to us as analysts, because Google is getting so much stronger at taking things that are coming from the cloud world for AI, bringing it into the experience that people get with GA. We're delighted about it because, you know, the machine is digging ditches so we can build skyscrapers with our customers. And it's a lot more powerful, especially with first-party data, right? So I would rather be in a world where if I don't have third-party cookies, that's fine, but I can take that first-party data that was given to me with consent, marry it with my CRM data that was also given to me with consent, and do really sophisticated things that weren't possible before. And I think that's what a lot of this new infrastructure is allowing us to do.
Yeah.
And when we think about the importance of first-party data, which again is data that was given to you with someone's implicit consent.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you're talking about with customers and your teams around building a really good foundation of a strategy for first-party data?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about how you look at first-party data from both organizing it as well, investing in it, I should start for it, then organizing and activating, right? So how do you invest in first-party data sources, right? There are two ways to think about that. There are cookie identifier-based first-party data, which is collected via tags on a browser or an app analytics product, so say Google Analytics. And that enables websites or app analytics to really measure performance of digital media and get the basics right in terms of that, right? So one way to do that is getting a Google global tag structure in place, enabled to unlock more advanced measurement solutions like enhanced conversions and consent mode. The Google Analytics SDK can be used for data collection and reporting and bidding for campaigns as a whole. So really, when you think about collecting those data signals, bringing them together, not only from those tools, but also bringing in your CRM system via website sign up or other means, or like call events. Those are all those permission-based signals that you're getting directly from the consumer that is, you know, that allows you to really start to understand and organize those first-party signals. And so from there, you want to think about, how do I take the two combined and really look to, like, amplify that? And that's where things like Google Cloud comes into play, or Google Marketing Platform comes into play, to basically increase more of that audience understanding, both from a predictive type of machine learning analysis that we talked about. So when you look at bringing it together, now you're looking at measuring it. And then the question is like, okay, now I have it organized, I know what the insights are, what do I do with it? It's now about activating it, right? So how do you activate your first party data? So this is where like customer match relies on first party data you own and have gotten consent for. And you could bring that into Google properties to basically create, you know, media engagement on, you know, YouTube, on search, to really reach your Google, those customers at scale across Google O&O. So first-party data can be used as a data source to enable a really comprehensive model, but it really takes you to invest, to really organize and do that analysis, to then activate it in media. I've talked about some of those infrastructures, just as like the tagging infrastructure. What infrastructures have you been talking to? Have you talked to with your marketers as a whole, Jim? Because it may go beyond tagging. And I'm curious.
It does, and you know, the thing that our customers are realizing in regards to first-party data, like the database in any AdTech and MarTech tool, we've all seen, you know, that picture where there's like 100 million logos,
Yeah.
And it's just like, it gives you a panic attack. Every one of those logos had its own proprietary locked down, you can't see it data store that was really full of their customers' information, right? And I think that one of the things that we really like about Google, which is why we focused on the Google stack so much, is that Google's completely transparent about letting their customers own their own data. It's the ability to pull everything out of everything in the GMP, but especially GA, and own it and have it be yours because you paid for it, is exciting and respectful to customers. And increasingly with this move towards, I need my first party data, which I therefore need to own, like it's my asset. People are realizing that their marketing engines had this waste byproduct called data that they've been throwing out for 15 years. And that waste byproduct, hey, it's made out of gold. So how about we take all that gold and we own it, and now we need it. And so as that kind of moves itself towards what a good Canadian would call peace, order, and good governance, we're seeing we're basically seeing all of our customers and a lot of the companies that we're talked to starting to embrace the concept of governance, and hopefully not in an intimidating way. Because governance in a big enterprise is committees and flowcharts and documentation, and it's like a panic attack. Lowercase g governance, which is what I call it, is just thinking about how do we make sure things are documented? How do we make sure things are always accurate? How do we make sure we can catch something when it breaks, or ideally before it breaks? And like I was saying earlier, these are concepts that we've been very keen on for years, and sometimes gotten a little bit of, that's neat, but it's overkill. And now is the perfect time to go, that's my data, I paid for it,
yeah,
it's my thing, and I want to take care of it. And we're really seeing all of our customers really embrace it. And per Joy's presentation, governance and ownership of your data can feel like so overwhelming. And it's not that hard to get started. And frankly, if you don't, you're in a bad competitive situation when all these changes start to come through,
It starts with the marketer at the end of the day, right? Like the relationship is actually not with the technology, it's with the marketer, right? And how the end customer feels like what's our relationship, and do I want to give you that permission? And clients will say, I will grant that opportunity to you as long as you use my data in a very thoughtful way, to be very simple about it, And the more marketers can actually think about that, and that's where the investment comes in. Like, how do you want to engage with your customer? What information do you want to gather, and how do you want to use it? It just makes a more richer consumer engagement. And at the end of the day, that's what all marketers want. How do I get to connect in a much deeper way? Because we know when you do, clients will come back and buy, purchase, and engage.
Absolutely. Now I know that because we're having too much fun, we should do this on the daily. Like we can cover a lot of ground. We've probably got 5 or 6 questions left that we'd solicited.
Sure.
Tara, you may have a backlog of questions as well, but we are at the 10-minute mark. So I thought what I could do, Sharon, we don't start talking like auctioneers for 8 or 9 minutes. I'm going to present 2 different questions to you that we've solicited, and you kind of pick your favorite and run with it.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
Yeah, so we've been hearing a lot from, again, customers and agency partners about the machine learning that Google's using to start to model user behavior, especially in a world where cookies aren't going to be available. We're getting a lot of questions about that. And we're also hearing a lot about this concept of enhanced conversions. Is one of those something that you've kind of heard more about, that you're more passionate about? I'm going to throw you under the bus and make you pick.
Both are good. I'm going to go with machine learning because that, for 100, because that is like the crux of everything. You think about moving, where the industry is moving as a whole. So when we think about machine learning, it's the factor there is there's less user data available, right? And so modeling and machine learning helps us to really maximize our own data, right? Back to that initial first party data. So we could do more with less, right? So by augmenting what the user data is available and capitalizing on other available signals, we can basically have a richer experience. So machine learning can understand massive and diverse data inputs quickly. It recognizes patterns to make predictions, continuously learning. It can assemble a really large data set, filter trillions of data points over seconds, right? So, and it really produces inferences where a user's next, likely transaction will be, all without needing any personal identifiable information. That's what's exciting about machine learning. So what we want to think about, and we think about our CEO, like even Sundar said a few years ago, we as Google are becoming a machine learning first company. You can see this in our adoption of our automation and bidding, our smart bidding campaign types. But the context of privacy in a changing ad ecosystem, we continue to invest in more machine-based modeling to deliver results for consumers that forever they can rely on and realize they're in a safe space. So for example, what does the lack of third-party cookie means to measurement? This is where conversion modeling, so I'll touch on the second question a little bit, enables Google to qualify the impact of marketing investments where observed observation is basically absent. So creating a more aggregate view of the customer, we can be able to really understand the future behavior. To take that down from a third-party perspective, BCG did a study that businesses that actually deployed machine-based technology saw a boost in campaign performance by 35%. So that's not Google speaking. That is, a third party acknowledging like machine learning is the way to really drive your campaign performance in a very privacy safe way for your customers. So it's really a win-win when you think about privacy preserving technologies as a whole. So we're really excited about where machine learning will take the ads business. It's been in other parts of the business, but where it's going to take the ads business is really exceptional.
Yeah, we're excited about it too, and from the perspective of machines will catch things that we don't have to catch, and we don't have to spend 40 hours digging a ditch. Like a good analyst can really leverage those insights and do exciting things, and that's the thing I like about Google's strategy for the next couple of years, which is markedly different than some of the other platforms, which is to allow customers to own their own data. The way I've been describing it to our customers and other industry folks is that 5 years ago Google Analytics was the car, like GTM was the gas, but like the entire primary output of the work you were doing on digital analytics was to empower GA, and now GA is really a cylinder in a much more exciting engine that's called Google Cloud, right? And so the more of these cylinders you can activate, the more horsepower you're able to car metaphor. But it's something that is much easier to own and operate and execute on with Google than it really is anywhere else. So I couldn't agree with you more. Now, I know, Tara, that we're getting close to time. We have 5 minutes left. We had a couple of great questions for Sharon that were unanswered. Maybe we could do like a joint blog post or something, Sharon, to kind of get the rest of those answered. I think that could be some fun. But has anything come in on the wire, Tara, that you'd like to throw at either of us?
No, I guess you guys have just done such a great job of answering the questions from the audience before they even had a chance to ask.
Well,
amazing.
Did you want to go into song?
We could. For those of you who are not aware, which is everyone listening in, I was trying to convince Sharon to do a duet with me, and neither of us are singers, so I don't think we'll inflict that on you. It's just it's a lot of fun to talk about work with a friend, and it makes me giddy, and I want to sing. But we won't do that today. But I think what we will do is take those last 3 or 4 questions and park them for maybe another piece of content later. We covered so much ground today, and it's so great for us and for our customers and for our stakeholders to be in a position to hear from not only an expert, but such a well-spoken one on how Google is approaching these things that are so close to us, Sharon. I really appreciate this.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and it's Google's pleasure. I think that the takeaway from here is a lot of moving parts, right? And if anything, this is really a testament of we can't do it alone. So we need our partners, we need our marketers, we need that feedback loop. We are setting some precedents, we are being made some bold actions, but at the same time, we want to do that with care and thought. And so feedback is welcome. Feedback is truly a gift. And so we thank you for your partnership and all the voices you bring back from the marketers and agencies and publishers about our products, our solutions. And so I hope this conversation is just the continued presentation